Kobe Bean Bryant is the reasonable doubt of basketball.
Go.
But before we get into all that, be sure to like, subscribe, notification bell, share, tell your mama them.
Go.
All right, let's get to it. My bad.
Go.
Reasonable Doubt is arguably a top 5 hip hop album of all time. But it wasn't always that way for Reasonable Doubt. I was 18 when Reasonable Doubt came out, so that album has a special place in my heart because it was the soundtrack to me really stepping into my own and moving around the city how I felt like I wanted to. Reasonable Doubt was hard to convince people of during that time because there was other hip hop that was dominating people's ears. People didn't want to hear the polished rapping of Reasonable Doubt. They wanted to hear the struggle of DMX's growling and gruff approach. They wanted to hear Mace in the shiny suits. They had their ear to the street when it came to the locks. They loved Fabulous on the Clue tapes. But nobody was ready for that mainstream person that said, you guys look like workers. Let me tell y'all how a boss talks. That was Reasonable Doubt. But that was also Kobe Bean Bryant, who stood out above his peers because he was more mature than them. He was more polished than them. He'd seen more of the world than them. He'd done more basketball-wise than them because he had already had his game kind of polished and honed overseas, which is what made him so dominant fundamentally when he got back here to the States, when he added the flash and dash of the U.S. American ghetto basketball, if we're being real. Kobe Bean Bryant, Reasonable Doubt. Let's explore it.
Go.
Reasonable Doubt was a classic, but it was unappreciated at first, much like Kobe Bean Bryant. Kobe Bean Bryant was maligned by his teammates when he first got to the NBA. They didn't like the fact that he had already fashioned himself after the GOAT Michael Jordan and even stated verbally that he was going to be better than Mike. I think Kobe's better than Mike. But with that said, a lot of that message didn't sit well with his peers and those who came before him. If you look at Reasonable Doubt and think about the time that it came out, Jay-Z was speaking on a level of a person who had already made it in one business. So why couldn't he do that easily in this one? And when he spoke to his peers, he talked to them like they were trying to keep up with him, although their catalog said otherwise. But he wasn't talking about musically. He was talking about the mind behind the music, because that's where he felt his peers lacked. They thought too much like workers. They thought too much like those who were waiting to be given an opportunity. While him, Dame Dash, and Biggs Burke came in snatching opportunities, letting people know this is what they were going to do, and they were going to be doing it for a long time. Kobe Bean Bryant having that same swagger in his first dunk contest, winning it. Also at the same time going to prom with Brandy. Also at the same time being a part of the most storied franchise in NBA history. If you think about Reasonable Doubt, the only feature that stands out is Notorious Big on Brooklyn's Finest. At that time, the Notorious Big was the best thing smoking. There was nobody bigger than Big. So to have him be on a Jay-Z album, not only that, but a song representing Brooklyn where they both hailed from, that was a recipe for competition, but it wasn't. Because below the surface, they were sharpening each other's swords, having plans to take over the industry at a later date. Unfortunately, Notorious Big passed away. He didn't get to see that come to fruition. But Jay-Z did by heading one of the strongest musical factions in music history in Rockefeller Records. Although Jay-Z did chart a course, he did struggle stepping out of the shadow of the Notorious Big even after he passed. Even to the point of making the declaration, if I'm not better than Big, I'm the closest one. By Kobe's third year, it was already established that he was going to be that guy going forward. He still had a few hurdles to overcome. He still had to win some medal, and he did that. 3 times, in fact, alongside Shaquille O'Neal, which was the problem, because that shadow also overcast his success. He later proved it by winning 2 without Shaq, which is why I feel Kobe's better than Mike. But nobody cared about Kobe's coming of age story until he had won those 2. Because by that time, he had already adopted his Mamba mentality mindset that went on to shape the league as a whole for years to come. When Hard Knock Life Volume 2 came out, people had forgotten about Reasonable Doubt and Volume 1 both of which boasted some classic material. But nobody cared about Reasonable Doubt being a classic until he sold 5 million with Hard Knock Life Volume 2. Why? Because now people wanted to know what he was talking about. And he always harkened back, letting people know, hey, I said that already. Remember when I said that? I told y'all that. Go back. Now, when Reasonable Doubt first dropped, it didn't even crack the top 10. By the time Hard Knock Life finished selling 5 million, Reasonable Doubt was platinum. See the correlation? Nobody cared about his early work until he had proved himself beyond his peers. Much like Kobe Bryant, after winning 5, people went back to his early work and saw how much he actually carried those early Lakers teams. So they kind of had to remove the smudge of having Shaq be the one that shouldered the burden of those championships. Reasonable Doubt had to earn the respect of a classic after the artist had proven that he could produce a world-renowned classic. Kobe Bean Bryant wasn't the Mamba until that 5th championship and beyond, when people realized what he was really doing early on. He was making a declaration for greatness and proving it every step along the way as you watch not only his successes, but his really big mistakes. Yet and still, 5 rings. Nobody stands shoulder with him but the man you want me to mention as the greatest, but I can't. Because just like I feel like Reasonable Doubt is the greatest rap album of all time Jay-Z ever produced, I feel like the greatest basketball player the NBA ever produced by example and game is Kobe Bean Bryant.
Go.
Be sure to like, subscribe, yada, 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 blah, 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 ding, ding, bow, bow, bow. Yes, sir.